Hey guys, Alex Ratcliffe here from Board Game Co. First and foremost, thank you guys so much for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. We reached that over the weekend. I don't know when this video is actually going up, but whenever it does, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, for commenting, for engaging. I started this YouTube channel back in December, and it's just been a blast. I really enjoy doing the content. I really enjoy being involved in board games, and this is just one more outlet for that. But that being said, it only works as long as I actually have people watching. There's no point staring at a wall. I've heard a great quote once that a blog is a conversation nobody asked to have. The flip side is if you actually have engagement, if you actually have viewership, that changes it. Then it's a conversation people do want to have with you. So thank you so much. I cannot tell you enough. It is only the fact that you guys are actually watching, the fact that you guys are engaging, the fact that you guys enjoy the content. It's only that makes the content worth producing. So without you guys, I'm nothing. I'm just a guy talking to a camera and nothing. So it's you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll be here for the next 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is. But I'm having a blast. Hope you guys are as well. From there, we have another Play This Not That video. This time we're doing the disaster version of Play This Not That. Play This Not That, if you haven't watched my other videos, is a segment where I compare two games, sometimes more, games with similarities, some degree of overlap in what they are, what audience they're catering to. I go over quickly what each game does, I go over my preferences, and then I tell you which one I think you should be playing, which one I think is the better game. So if you stick around to the end of this video, I will tell you which one I think you should play, as well as I'll tell you if the loser's in my collection. Sometimes the loser stays in my collection, sometimes the loser does not. It depends. They're often great games. Today's version is, like I said, the disaster version. We have Atlantis Rising, which I played over the weekend, and Pandemic, which this is the Big Broken Token box. Pandemic and Atlantis Rising are both games I have not played in a long time. I played multiple games of the original Atlantis Rising when it came out. I recently got this, and over the weekend I played a bunch of games of both. That is because it is currently the end of week 1 of all the kids at home from COVID-19 and the corona situation sweeping the world. Everyone has been, well, everyone in our, I guess, area has been playing more board games, and these guys are seeing more play than ever before. Over the weekend, we of course pulled out Pandemic. Very thematic. It's a great game that I haven't pulled out the plain vanilla version in a long time. We've done Pandemic Legacy, but not so much the vanilla version. So, with that said, long introduction, let's get straight into the actual board games. Pandemic is both of these games are cooperative games in which you're trying to prevent disasters from happening. Like I said, this is the disaster version of Play This Not That. Both of them, you're trying to stop bad things from happening as a cooperative group of players. In Pandemic, there are various epidemics sweeping the nation, and you have to cure these 4 different diseases by moving around the board and cooperatively taking actions that slowly remove the diseases and stop the escalation of continuing outbreaks that are just, destroying everything. In Atlantis Rising, on the other hand, you are in the legendary city of Atlantis. The city is flooding, and you're trying to build a portal so that you and your people can escape before everything floods. So that's the high level overview. If you want to know more about both these games, go ahead, check out other channels. They go into a lot more detail. I'm here more to compare and contrast than I am to, really go into the details that much. So let's start with it. Atlantis Rising is absolutely gorgeous. In terms of the looks aspect of the games, Atlantis Rising it kills Pandemic in this context. Atlantis Rising looks incredible. You have this, I'll try to throw an image into the video here, but you have this 5-star island, 6-star island coming out of the water with the various tiles flipping as the island floods. From a sheer production level quality, the art is better, the actual board and layout draws you into the world off the bat. The various card art, everything from a production and art level, I think Atlantis Rising strongly destroys Pandemic in this category. From a theme category, I prefer Atlantis Rising. I'm a sucker for mythical themes of any kind, any form of fantasy or sci-fi or space. I like those themes for the most part. Pandemic, while it's a great theme, it's also just very normal, although, again, with everything going on with COVID-19, it's a little more real than we'd all like. But in terms of theme, I drastically prefer Atlantis Rising. It's just a theme that calls to me much more. In terms of gameplay, they both have a lot of similarities. Both of them, you're slowly taking actions to prevent the bad things, while so on your turn, you're taking actions to do good, and then you wait for the board to take its turn where it does bad. It's a very similar gameplay. Both handle player counts very well. Meaning both are okay with 1 and 2 players, but better with 3 and 4 players. Both of them have a range of how hard they are. Atlantis Rising, for the most part, ranges from hard to super hard, depending on how the game plays out and the luck aspect plays out. And in terms of Pandemic, it ranges from medium to hard. That being said, with modules and expansions, it can also range from hard to super hard. So it does have more things going on to cater that difficulty level. In today's Play This Not That, Pandemic is going to be the winner. I know I just went on and told you how much I love the art and pull you in factor of Atlantis Rising. That being said, the gameplay is going to always trump art and visuals and miniatures and all that for me, even though I love those other things. So let's go into 3 reasons why I prefer Pandemic over Atlantis Rising. And like I said, if you stick around to the end, I will tell you whether I'm actually keeping Atlantis Rising or not, because that's still unknown. But starting with reason number 1, in terms of the gameplay, Atlantis Rising has this thing going on where as the island floods, the actions you take get less powerful. Whereas before you had a X level chance of, let's say you roll a die for getting resources. Each of the islands are more powerful the closer to the water they are. So as the game progresses, the actions you take get less and less powerful. And I hate that. I love the game. I hate that mechanic. I hate the idea that as the game progresses, the things you're doing are less powerful. They do mitigate that for in a variety of ways. First of all, as the game progresses, you will get more workers to place out. Secondly, you're slowly building this portal that you're escaping from, which also comes with its own actions that you can take. So there are areas of the game that get more powerful, but the core gameplay gets harder as the island floods. It feels less rewarding as the island floods, which means the longer the game goes on, the more I feel like I'm taking less efficient actions, which just sucks. I've talked about in other videos how I love upgrading. I love getting better things. I love getting more powerful. Oh, look, I unlocked this ability. Look at all these extra things I can do. And Atlantis Rising has the reverse effect. It's not, look at all these extra things I could do. It's, you know how you could have done that 2 turns ago? Well, now you can only do half that. Enjoy. I do not like that mechanic in a game. I don't mind losing, I don't mind difficulty. I love both of these games the most when you feel you're going to lose. It's not about the difficulty aspect. I don't mind having mass outbreaks in Pandemic. I don't mind that at all. It's great. Bring it on. Let me feel like I'm actually doing something and not just plodding along the game. Let me feel like I really have to struggle to win. I don't mind the struggle to win factor. If anything, these games, when they're too easy, they are less fun. When you lose horribly, they are more fun. But I do not like the less powerful actions as the gameplay progresses. It is not rewarding. It doesn't feel fun. It's not something I enjoy. It's, again, good game, but that's the reason why Pandemic wins. But in Pandemic, your actions do not get less powerful as the game goes on at all. They're the same actions the whole way through. You're just trying to manage more of a disaster, which that I don't mind. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the progression of the way things go in terms of difficulty and naturalness. Now, what I mean by that, that's a little vague of an overview. What I mean by that is in Atlantis Rising, most of the randomness comes from the fact that you're rolling dice to get resources. So you're rolling dice, and whether or not you achieve the roll you need, you'll get the resource. Additionally, as the island floods, it's almost completely random in terms of the way which island section will flood. So you can try to put your guys on a area of the island closer to the water to get an action, but if it floods, then you're out of luck and you guys don't get their action. It's much more random in the way the game hurts you. I drastically prefer Pandemic, where there's this escalation that makes sense. The way it works is the diseases hit cities, and then those same cards that got hit are going to be the ones that get drawn again. So there's a natural, and this feels very natural in terms of a way a Pandemic would work. The cities that are having the hardest time are the ones that you constantly have to keep going back to. And that gives a degree of prediction to the game that is a lot more rewarding to deal with. In Pandemic, you make this risk assessment, risk mitigation analysis of, well, I think these cities will get hit, I think that one won't. I can try to play around what I believe will reliably happen. And you might be wrong. It's totally fine to be wrong. It's totally fine to play the odds and be wrong, and that just feels like life. Okay, great. We sat there, we mitigated, but at the end of the day, New York got hit, and then you got to play this out around that. Whereas in Atlantis Rising, it feels more like, well, just completely random. It doesn't feel like you can make an intelligent judgment call as to whether to go to this area of the island or not. It feels like, well, I'll hope for the best, but it's going to be completely random what actually happens. It's going to be completely random whether I get those resources. The area, there's a lot less mitigation in Atlantis Rising and a lot less reliable prediction. Now, I will note for the record, as the game goes on, you do get more and more ways to mitigate that aspect by putting up barriers and doing various actions or abilities that will help mitigate that. It won't mitigate the randomness, but it can help prepare you for the suffering of the randomness. That being said, that's usually more mid to late game, and it's still kind of random. So Pandemic is a big win for me in that category. And finally, the last reason I prefer Pandemic, and this is possibly unfair, but it is what it is. Pandemic has a lot of expansions going on with it. In terms of the base game alone, forget all the iterations of Pandemic Legacy, Pandemic Rome, all these other iterations. Within default core Pandemic, there are at least 3 expansions that I know of. There's Pandemic on the Brink, Pandemic in the Lab, and Pandemic State of Emergency. I haven't even touched State of Emergency. I've done in the Lab once, and I do on the Brink and various modules in there a lot of the time. It adds a huge amount of variability to the Pandemic experience that I do not get from Atlantis Rising, at least not yet. Atlantis Rising does have variability, do not get me wrong. There are various, in terms of the portal that you are building, there are different tiles you can select. In terms of the library cards, there are different library cards will come out each round that will change the way you play the game. The characters, there's definitely a level of variability in the characters. So do not take this as a critique that Atlantis Rising does not have variability. It definitely does. But in terms of Pandemic, there's so much more content that in a very rewarding way really adds to the gameplay. I haven't even played with a bunch of the content, like I said. I've played with some of the modules and one of the expansions, and it already adds a huge amount of variability to the game, of ways you can mix up the experience, of ways you can increase or decrease difficulty. There's a lot more going on that can be added to your gameplay, which I thoroughly enjoy. So that's basically it. I prefer Pandemic. Play this, not that. Pandemic wins fairly strongly against Atlantis Rising. In terms of whether I am keeping the game, time for that decision. Short answer is, for now, yes. I don't think it's going to stick around forever. I think that ultimately it's going to end up in that regular thing that some of these games go through where I don't pull it off the shelf because I'd rather pull something else off the shelf. That being said, the reason I'm keeping Atlantis Rising for right now is that first aspect I told you about. The board draws you in, not just visually from the art, but the way the tiles slowly flip and the island floods is a really engaging aspect. It's really engaging from the thematic standpoint. And it makes Atlantis Rising fun to pull out and play. For right now, it is staying in the collection. It's entirely possible that 2 months from now it'll be gone, or in one of my regular updates I'll change my mind. It's entirely possible I'll play it 2 more times and it'll be gone. But for right now, as of the time of this video, I am holding on to it somewhat against my better judgment. Like I said, it's always a question of limited time and choices to play, but at the same time, I do like both these games. Pandemic has been solidly in my collection since 2012. I've gotten expansion after expansion for it. I don't really have most of the knockoffs, although I have enjoyed the Pandemic Legacy series. The knockoffs are more an issue of, not knockoffs are the wrong term, but the various other iterations of, Iberia, or I don't remember all the names offhand, but Fall of Rome, or the Rome one, whichever ones there are. I've played a bunch of them. I haven't played Rome yet. I have enjoyed them, but I prefer the core Pandemic experience, and I don't feel the need to own more than one, at least as of now. That's basically it. I hope you enjoyed this Play This, Not That video. Once again, let me know in the comments down below. Have you played these? What's your opinion? Have you played both? Which ones are you keeping? Are you keeping both? What are your general thoughts and experiences of these 2 games? And also, how are you dealing with everything going on in the world right now? Are you playing more games? Are you worried? Are you stressed? This is a very unique time. It's a very difficult time. Obviously, we're wishing the best to anyone and everyone affected. I think everyone is affected by this. It's just a question of the level and the degree. Where I am right now, it's mostly social distancing and nothing hardly enforced, but everyone's staying inside. The kids are all home. It's a very unique and troubling time that we're going through, and I hope everyone is coping as well as they possibly can be. That's basically it. This is the video. Go ahead and subscribe down below. Ring the bell for notifications. Thank you again for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for watching, engaging. I really appreciate it. I'm Alex from Board Game Co. You can support us. Head on over to boardgameco.com. You can buy some games, trade some games, sell some games, all that stuff. Other than that, just watch the videos and engage. That's more than enough. That's all I can ask for. Thank you so much, and have a good one.